In Agricola, you're playing as competing farmers trying to build the most efficient farm. Agricola is exclusively for 2 players and takes about 30 minutes. Setup. Place the game board in the center of the playing area. Give each player a farm board. The forest goes at the top and the road at the bottom. Pick a color and take your 3 workers. Place them near your farm board. Give each player 9 border pieces. The 8 leftover borders go next to the game board near the expand action space. For your first game, place 4 farm expansion tiles, 4 stall/stable tiles, and the 10 feeding troughs to the side. Form piles of the building resources and different animals. These tiles serve to represent 4 of their specific resource should the board become crowded later in the game. Lay out the 4 basic special buildings: a half-timbered house, open stable, shelter, and storage. After you have a game or 2 of Agricola under your belt, you should start to include the additional special buildings in setup. 4 for an intermediate game and 8 for an expert game. Choose a start player and you're ready to play. The game is played over 8 rounds, with each round consisting of 4 separate phases: the refill phase, the work phase, the home phase, and the breeding phase. Let's start with the refill phase. At the start of each round, you'll refill the action spaces on the board with this small arrow symbol, even if there are goods left over from the previous round. For the 4 animal action spaces, if the space is empty, refill that space with the animal on top. If the first animal is already there because no player claimed it in a previous round, place the animal in parentheses instead. At the beginning of each round, you'll refill the 4 resource spaces, the 4 animal spaces, and the expand space. Just add another border piece. This is also your round counter, as you'll notice there are 8 unused border pieces at the start of the game, equal to the number of rounds. After the refill phase is phase 2, the work phase. Beginning with the first player, you'll alternate taking turns placing 1 worker at a time until all workers have been placed on the board. When you place a worker on an action, you immediately take that action shown on the space. You may not place a worker on a space without using at least one of the actions shown. Actions occupied by another worker are blocked for this current round. We will cover the available action spaces later. After all 6 workers have been placed, the work phase ends. The third phase is the home phase, and that just means to return your workers. Phase 4 is the breeding phase. If you have at least 2 animals of the same type anywhere in your farm, you get another animal of that type. But as always, you must have a place to keep it. You can get at most 1 of each animal type during the breeding phase, even if you have more than 1 pair of that animal. The round ends after both players have bred their animals. Next, let's cover how to raise animals. First, animals can be kept inside pastures. You create pastures by enclosing spaces with border pieces. Borders on building tiles can also enclose pastures. Each enclosed farm space can hold up to 2 animals, and they must be of the same type. Unfinished pastures cannot hold any animals. You can also choose to divide up pastures later. Borders must be placed from your own personal supply. To obtain more borders, you must use the expand action. You can also keep animals in most buildings. Buildings can be built on any space in your farm that doesn't already have a building on it, including spaces that already have borders or feeding troughs. There are 3 types of buildings: stalls, stables, and special buildings. Stalls and stables are 2 sides of the same tile. You must first build a stall and then upgrade it to a stable later. As noted here, stalls can hold up to 3 animals of the same type. Stalls cost 3 stone and 1 reed to build and is worth 1 point at the end of the game. When you upgrade a stall to a stable, you simply flip it over. This costs either 5 wood or 5 stone. Stables can hold up to 5 animals of the same type and is worth 4 points at the end of the game. Let's review the basic special buildings you'll use in your first game of Agricola. The open stable building costs either 3 stone or 3 wood to build. It upgrades your stall, meaning you just remove the stall and put this in its place instead. It scores 2 points at the end of the game. You immediately gain 1 cow or 1 horse, and it can hold up to 5 animals of the same type. Next, the half-timbered house costs 3 wood, 2 stone, and 1 reed to build. It upgrades the cottage tile that is on your farm board at the start of the game. It's worth 5 points at the end of the game and allows you to hold 2 animals of the same type. Next is the storage special building. This costs 2 wood and 1 reed to build and scores you a half point per building resource you have left at the end of the game. Do not round up or down, but half points are possible. And since there's no symbol on the bottom right, the storage cannot keep animals. Last is the shelter, which costs 2 wood and 1 stone to build, is worth 0 points at the end of the game, allows you to immediately gain 1 of any animal, and can also hold 1 animal. Detailed descriptions of the additional special buildings can be found on pages 9 through 12 of your rulebook. Next, let's cover feeding troughs. Feeding troughs double the number of animals that can be kept in a building or pasture. You may only build 1 feeding trough on each farm space, but you can have multiples in a pasture. The effects are cumulative, so for example, in this pasture with 2 feeding troughs, instead of being able to hold 2 sheep in each tile, you would be able to hold 2 times 2 times 2, or 8 in each space, or 16 total in this pasture. With a trough, the stall would now be able to store 6 animals instead of 3. If you choose to build a trough in an unfinished pasture, that space can now hold 1 animal. You are allowed to close off this pasture later. And you can also build a stall or special building on a space that already has a feeding trough. In both of these examples, the feeding trough remains where it was, but now has a new effect. You may also upgrade buildings with a feeding trough already on them, and again, the feeding trough has a new effect. Once anything is built, it cannot be moved or removed from your farm board. Animals, however, can move around. You can rearrange the animals on your farm or remove them from your farm whenever you want. You will want to do this regularly to make the most use of the space available. Now that we have some context, let's cover the available action spaces. Starting in the top left, this allows you to gain the start player token and all of the wood that has accumulated on it. As a reminder, any space with this arrow gets refilled every round. This space allows you to take all the wood placed here and will accumulate 3 new wood per round. These 2 spaces allow you to claim all of the stone there and will accumulate 1 or 2 stone respectively. Choosing this action allows you to spend 1 wood per border to build as many as you want. This space allows you to build 2 borders for free and then spend 2 stone per additional border as many times as you want. This space allows you to gain 1 wood, 1 stone, and 1 reed. This space allows you to gain all of the accumulated borders that are here and expand your farm by 1 tile. This space allows you to build a single stall at the cost of 3 stone and 1 reed. This action allows you to place 1 feeding trough on a farm space from the supply at no cost, and then you can pay 3 wood as many times as you want to build additional troughs. This space allows you to upgrade your stalls to stables any number of times. Each upgrade costs either 5 wood or 5 stone. These 2 spaces allow you to build a special building. And lastly, these 4 spaces allow you to claim all of the animals or resources that are in that space. They must be placed in your farm immediately or they run away. That means they're returned to the supply. You'll play through rounds in that fashion, refilling the spaces in the refill phase, taking turns placing your workers and taking actions in the work phase, returning your workers in the home phase, and then finally breeding your animals during the breeding phase. The game ends after the breeding phase of round 8. Again, you can keep track of the round by the number of borders left in the supply, since 1 will be added every refill phase. Finally, let's move to scoring. First, you score 1 point per animal in your farm, regardless of type. Next, you'll score points according to the table shown here. This is also printed on the side of the box for easy reference during the game. For example, if you have 2 sheep, you would score -3 bonus points. If you have 8 cows, you would score 2 bonus points. Next, each farm expansion where all 3 farm spaces have been used is worth 4 points. A farm space is considered used if it has a tile and/or feeding trough on it, or is part of a fully enclosed pasture. If a farm space has unfinished or no borders, it is considered unused. Lastly, buildings are worth the points printed on them. Tally up your points, and the player with the most points wins. In case of a tie, the player who is not the start player in round 1 is the winner. And that's how you play Agricola, all creatures big and small. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing for future board game content just like this. Thanks for watching.